Next, unpacking language. So we at TJOC believe that it is incredibly important to center the dignity and humanity of people, particularly people that are impacted by the carceral system. So because of this, we refrain from using terminology like inmate, felon, criminal, and we use words or terms like people who are incarcerated, person convicted of a felony, and incarcerated individuals. We believe that people are more than the behaviors that they've engaged in, and that by using this language, we really separate the identity and humanity of a person from behaviors that we engage in. Next, I am going to be covering just some general overview information about demographics in the Orange County jails, and then I will be turning it over to our first guest speaker. We actually have 3 guest speakers lined up, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague Rose, who's going to talk about jail expansion in Orange County. And again, like last time, if you all have any questions throughout, please feel free to just drop them in the chat box, and then we will try to get through as many of those as possible. To introduce myself, my name is Daisy Ramirez. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a steering committee member and a founding member of Transforming Justice Orange County, and I am here in that capacity. My full-time job, I work with the American Civil Liberties Union as a jails conditions and policy coordinator. My work at the ACLU includes examining conditions of confinement in the Orange County jail system and advocating on behalf and with incarcerated individuals and their loved ones. My community engagement, public education, and advocacy work centers the idea that we need transformative justice instead of punishment, and aims to promote divestment from jails and investment in people and community. So this is a follow-up to some of the content that we covered during workshop number 1, which was the position of sheriff coroner and the board of supervisors. But obviously this is specific to sheriff coroners. And the reason behind this slide is one of the things that we want to highlight for you all is that sheriffs typically enjoy, incredibly long tenures. Don Barnes was sworn into office in 2018, so he's been in office for, going on 2 years. But prior to that, Sandra Hutchins, his predecessor, was in office for a decade. Before her, Jack Anderson was only in office for about 5 months. He was appointed by the Board of Supervisors after former Sheriff Mike Corona was indicted on federal charges. Mike Corona had occupied the position of Sheriff Coroner for 9 years. And before Corona, Brad Gates occupied that office for more than 2 decades. So again, just right now, fortunately, I think there's so much more attention to the position of sheriff. There's, also like the recognition that these are people that are elected. These are people that we get to vote for and organize, against once they take on the position and if they don't follow through on any policy commitments that they make during their campaign. Next slide. So we went through some of these demographics last time, but just to recap, and especially for folks that didn't get a chance to join us last time, in 2019, the average daily population of the Orange County jails was roughly 5,400. So basically on any given day, there were about 5,400 people behind bars in the county jail system. More than 50% of those individuals, 55% of those individuals to be exact, were people that had not been convicted of the charges that they were facing. So again, these are folks that are behind bars due to an inability to post bail. And in 2019, more than 55,000 people were booked into the jail system. Bookings over the last 9 years. So from 2010 to 2019, you all can get a sense of how many people were booked into the jails on any given year. Next slide. And again, you all will receive the deck after a few days after today, as well as a link to the recording. This next slide is the average daily population. Again, on any given day in 2011, that is when then Governor Brown signed AB 109 into law. The state prison system being mandated by the courts to reduce the population of the prison system. Non-serious, non-violent, non-sexual crimes, rather than serving their time in prison, those people were now serving their time in the county jail system. In 2015, that's when Prop 47 was approved by voters, and it passed with almost 60% of support from folks in California. And what Prop 47 did, it reduced penalties associated with the set of lower level drug and property offenses, including things like check forgery, drug possession, receiving stolen property, shoplifting, writing bad checks. Those offenses were reclassified from felonies to misdemeanors. And many of the misdemeanors carried a maximum sentence of 1 year in jail. And the months that followed Prop 47, jail populations declined sharply, driven primarily by a reduction in individuals that were being held or serving time for Prop 47 offenses. So there in 2015, you can see a decline. And then the last thing I want to point out is that in 2020, that only accounts for data that is available from January 1st, 2020 to March 1st, 2020. Next slide. Here we have sentenced and unsentenced population. So you all can see that over the last decade, more than half of the people in the Orange County jail system are people that have not been sentenced of the crime that they are facing, with the exception of 2012. Every other year, a majority of the folks were unsentenced. Next slide. This shows you all the breakdown of sentenced and unsentenced felony and misdemeanors. So you can see that the largest percentage of people in the Orange County jails are folks that are facing felony charges, but again, people that have not been convicted. Next slide. Here you have the percentage of the average daily population with open mental health cases. So you can see that there's been a significant increase from 2015 to 2020. Again, 2020 data only goes as far as March 1st, 2020. But this here shows the percentage of people that are identified as having a psychological disorder and are actively in need of and receiving mental health services in the Orange County jail system. Next slide. I won't go through, I won't actually read out all of this. This is just to kind of give you all a snapshot of some of the issues that are brought to our attention about conditions inside of the Orange County jails. So they're broken up into different categories: physical security, including things like violence, special cases and other, including things like the grievance system. Next slide. Medical care and mental health care. Things like medication, access to treatment, classification, and special needs. And then we have physical and living conditions, which includes uncleanliness, clothing, overcrowding, food services, commissary, communications, and other things as well. Next slide. We also talked a bit about this during workshop number 1, but it provides a few of the most recent controversies and misconduct that OCSD has been involved in, ranging from the informant scandal to, most recently in 2019, the inhumane shackling of people in custody, the department's failure to book evidence lawfully, and the class action lawsuit against the county around COVID-19 related conditions. Next slide. This is a very troubling thing that also is part of Orange County OCSD's history, the Orange County Sheriff's Department history, and that is people dying in the custody of OCSD and under their responsibility. According to a grand jury report that was released in 2018, about 44% of deaths in the jails from 2014 to 2017, they determined that those could have been prevented had folks on the inside had access to timely and adequate medical treatment. We know that from January 2010 to January 2020, 77 people died in custody, and that this year alone, 9 people have already died in custody. That already exceeds the total number of people that died in custody in 2019, which was 8 people. So it's August and we've already surpassed that. And the next slide just includes, we wanted to provide a space to share with you all, right, like the folks whose lives have been lost this year, but also being mindful of people's privacy and the privacy of families. So we only included their initials. We did not include their full name, but these are all the individuals that have died in the jails this year. Given the horrible conditions and given all the tragedies on the inside, people on the inside have been organizing for years, more often than not in the form of hunger strikes. And this is something that has been, valuable not only in Orange County and not only in county jail systems, but in the prison systems, right? This is something that people on the inside have organized themselves. It's been led by people on the inside. And as organizations on the outside, our role really is to uplift and support and connect all of this to the media, to uplift what's happening, because sometimes there are hunger strikes that happen on the inside that don't get any media attention. People in the community might not even know that they're happening. But there were hunger strikes, back-to-back hunger strikes in 2016. There was a 7-day hunger strike in 2018. A 3-day hunger strike in 2018, later in 2018. And then most recently, there was a 3-day hunger strike earlier this year when folks were demanding that the sheriff's department reinstate family visits, but obviously with like precautions for COVID-19, potentially like a staggered system. And they were also demanding that they receive hot meals again, because folks on the inside have been getting sacked lunches for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for several months now.
Hi, this is Michelle, and I will introduce Patty. Patty, I'm very honored to introduce Patty. She's an accomplished program director, certified trainer, and mentor for prison programs. She's facilitated dozens of leadership and empowerment trainings while serving her long prison term, and uniquely has been in the OC jails, both at the beginning of her long time and at the end. So she served some of her time under Mike Corona, as well as under Don Barnes. She's founded and created curriculum for powerful personal development and legal education and child development groups, and has helped grow the program Mothers Educating Mothers by being chair. She's built community both within the prison and across the walls with the outside, establishing annual events, commemorating victims and incarcerated individuals alike. In her words, Patty shares that for every action, there's a reaction and there's a consequence. Those things don't change, but people do change. She brings those from inside with her on her journey now. So I'd like to introduce Patty.
Hi, thank you for having me here tonight. And thank you all for being here and for being interested in the work that everyone is here collaboratively doing. Unfortunately, my story is not very unique. It's not a story that's unheard of. It's not even sad or empathy provoking, at least not for me. To me, it's just another story, very much like every other story of the women behind bars. There's so much pain and hurt behind the eyes of the women inside that if you poured it out of them, I think it would drown our universe. But no one ever stops to ask about it. Instead, they ask, what pill do you want to take? Or can I hand you a coloring page? Or something silly like that. Those are the kinds of questions we get asked inside the Orange County Jail by the mental health experts. I started going to jail as a juvenile, and I hit the Orange County Jail from the ages of 18 to 36 several times. So I can tell you from personal experience that jails don't work. If they did, I wouldn't have spent half of my life inside of them. It's not something that I'm proud of, but it's a fact of my life. And it's something that I have grown from. And I'm proud of the woman that I am today. During my earlier years and my earlier trips in the county, I remember wanting to find a way out. And I remember one of my trips during the county, in the county jail, I wanted to get my GED. And I asked for it, and they kept telling me no over and over. And I kept insisting and insisting. I said, no, you know what? I really want to get it. And they were like, no, you're not ready. And no, this and that. And eventually, I clawed at them so much that they let me go ahead and take it. And I was able to earn my GED in the county jail. And that's about the only thing good that came out of it. During my most recent trip to the county, I had already found my way through in life, and I rehabilitated myself through prison programming, but the county jail still remained ill-equipped to help anyone who, like me, wanted a way out. In fact, although the physical abuse that the county jail perpetuated in the past had subsided, the emotional, verbal, and mental abuse was still very rampant. And when I say recent, I mean recent, like this year recent. Mental health is a huge issue inside the jails, and they're just not equipped to deal with it. I personally lived with a woman who was diagnosed as schizoaffective, and the way that the county jail deals with it is basically, they bring somebody in who is diagnosed with this, huge schizoaffective disorder, and they put her in my cell and they say, here you go, you deal with it. So when the girl has an episode, and she's up for 48 hours because she can't sleep, and she pushes the emergency button and tells them, hey, I just need my medication so I can go to sleep because I can't go to sleep, I'm on a manic episode. And they tell her, oh, well, it's Saturday or it's Sunday and nobody's here, and oh well, deal with it. And now I can't get any sleep, and it just, there's no help, and there's no sense of urgency to help anybody with their issues. And then they say that they want to build this other place to house these people, when in reality, it feels like all they want to do is just kind of shuffle people around to make it look like something is being done, when in reality, nothing's really getting done. They tell us to kind of deal with it on our own, and there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that the community doesn't really get to see and or know about. And unless you're there inside in the jumpsuit or in the cages, is what we call them, you're not going to experience it, because the reports that they give out aren't always accurate, or they get tweaked, or they get doctored up. So it's really difficult to be able to get a real feel for what's really going on unless you're living it. So another thing that happens in there is when you're having any sort of an issue and you want to talk to mental health, the mental health people will come to your door, to your cell door, and they will ask you what's wrong with absolutely no privacy at all for your condition. So your roommate gets to hear what's going on with you, and your neighbors get to hear what's going on with you. There's no privacy at all. And So everybody is aware and is informed about what's happening with you. If you're sad or you're depressed, I mean, and one of their go-to, they don't have the time to sit down with you and talk to you. So if you just need like counseling type of therapy, they'll tell you just straight out, we don't have time, but what we can do for you is we can medicate you. So what medication do you think would help your situation? And that is a literal quote that I am sharing with you tonight from several mental health people. It's almost like it's a script that they read. And the other thing that you will hear often is there any coloring pages that I can give you today to help you with what you're going through? Those are your options, medication or coloring pages, to deal with somebody just died in your family and you're locked up and you can't get to the funeral, or to deal with you're facing a life sentence, or you know, COVID just hit and now you're not going to get visits, or there's whatever situation, if you're in a crisis, it just doesn't matter. If you're having suicidal tendencies, whatever's going on for you, those are the responses that you're going to get. Mental health inside the county jails is absolutely and utterly lacking in every aspect. And it is very disturbing. There's so many other examples that I could give you. I mean, I'm on a timed talk tonight, but that I just wanted to share a few things with you guys tonight, just to give you an example of the types of things that go on in there, to help you understand that the jails are not equipped to help people progress or to help people grow or to nurture you. And to help you change or to help you become a better person. The recidivism rates are ridiculous, right? People that come in and out of the county jail, repeat offenders are through the roof, and they tell you they don't want you to come back, but there's no action behind it. Like, if you really don't want me to come back, then why aren't you helping me to figure out a way to not come back? Right? So there isn't a lot of help in there. There isn't any way to sit down and say, okay, why are you doing what you're doing? What is the root problem here? What is causing you to end up the way that causing you to go the way that you're going, right? So, because I know that when I was a kid, that's all I wanted. I wanted somebody to just care, right? I wanted somebody to just say, like, what's going on for you, Laura? Like, why do you feel the need to hang out with these people? Or why do you feel the need to go over there and do that? Like, if somebody would have just asked, I would have said something. But nobody cared to ask, right? Nobody cared to take the time out of their day to say, hey, what's going on for you? Until I got to prison and I sat in a group therapy, and then somebody asked, and then somebody validated what I was feeling. And then that group changed my life. And I rehabilitated myself and I got myself together. And now I am a fully functioning member of the community. I pay taxes. I, have a full-time job, and I am doing everything that I can to be a full productive member of society that violates no laws. And I do the best that I can. How am I doing on time?
You have about a minute left.
Okay, so perfect. So what I want people basically just to walk away with tonight is that people do change, but jails are not what changes them. Nurturing people, talking to them, investing time in them, reaching out to them, validating their feelings, those small acts of kindness are the things that changed my life And those are the things that changed the lives of countless women. I watched it personally, watched it happen. I watched those small acts of kindness transform the lives of so many people. And I think that if we sat down as a community and just put our heads together and said, hey, how can we make these things a reality for everybody instead of just locking them away, I think that we could progress and that we could clean up our streets and that we could maybe shut the jails down. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Patty.
Thank you for sharing, Patty. And I know that we did get a few, we did get one question in the chat box. And I believe we do have some time for Q&A before we turn it over to Dolores. But someone asked, I believe Mary asked, where's correctional behavioral health staff? Are there no longer nurses in the jails 24/7? And I think this gets to right, like the inaccessibility and the challenges that people on the inside encounter when trying to access medical or mental health care. Can you talk to that question?
Sure. So there is mental health staff that will come, like if you put in what they call a pink slip, or they call them snivels in the county jail. You can put in a pink slip to see a mental health professional, and they will come and, like I said, they will come to your door and talk to you about what's going on for you. But the response that you're going to get from them is basically, what medication do you want, or can we up your meds that you're already currently on? So it's not that they won't, it's not that they won't respond to you or that you won't see anybody. They're there. They just don't have time to sit down and talk to you. Like, you know, out here on the streets, if you want to see a psychologist, you can go in and have a 50-minute consultation with them. You're not going to get that in the county jail. You'll get medicated or you'll get a coloring page. That's about it. So the availability of the mental health professionals are there. It's just their time is very limited. Like, for example, in the IRC, I believe there is anywhere, I think there's about 4 mental health professionals that travel the IRC, and about maybe 1,500 people in the IRC. The math is not going to work itself out.
Thank you, Patty. And I believe Michelle has a question.
Michelle, I just had a question. Did you have any thoughts about how often people come in and out of the jails, and how that affects recovery for you or for them? We may have lost.
Oh, there we go. Here I am.
Oh, good. There you are.
Yeah. So right. So the other thing is that people, they started doing long-term sentencing at the county jail. So you can do up to 6 years, serve a sentence of 6 to 8 years in the county jail, and that affects people's recovery, because you have people that are coming in and out that are still on drugs and still coming down off of the drugs, and that kind of affects your rehabilitation, because when you're getting sober, it's really difficult to get sober when somebody's coming in, you know, still using or still high or still coming down, and you're having to kick. And so when you're on different levels of sobriety, when you're in different stages of your sobriety, it makes it really difficult to maintain your sobriety. You know, because they even in NA they tell you, you know, once you're sober, you're not supposed to go around, you know, people, places, and things. You're supposed to stay away from, like, if you're an alcoholic, you're supposed to stay away from bars. You're supposed to stay away from people that are drinking. You're supposed to, well, it's impossible to do those things when you're in the county jail and you have a constant revolving door of people that are coming in using drugs and kicking drugs, and you know, it's a tough walk.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
So next, I'm going to be introducing our first guest speaker, and it's my privilege to introduce Dolores Canales. Dolores is the Director of Community Outreach with the Bail Project, which is a national organization designed to combat mass incarceration by disrupting the money bail system, one person at a time. Dolores has extensive experience in management, community organizing, and is also the co-founder of California Families Against Solitary Confinement. Having a father that was in prison, Dolores is personally familiar with the intergenerational impacts of incarceration. She brings a wealth of leadership experience in organizing with those personally affected by incarceration, drawing from her own experiences, as well as having a son who was incarcerated and participated in 3 of California state prison hunger strikes to end the use of indefinite solitary confinement. Dolores currently serves on the steering committee of the Unlock the Box campaign, a national movement to end the use of solitary confinement. Her work has been featured in The Guardian, Mother Jones, Truth Out, Al Jazeera, The Atlantic, Democracy Now!, and the Oscar-nominated documentary 13th. She has been interviewed by Oprah Winfrey for her work on solitary confinement and was recently granted the Changemaker Award by the Center for Constitutional Rights. Dolores is a 2014 Soros Justice Fellow, a 2019 Initiate Justice Fellow, and 2020 WOHO Fellow. Dolores was recently appointed a voting member by LA Supervisor Janice Hahn on the Alternatives to Incarceration work group and is currently organizing community engagement workshops across LA in neighborhoods with a high impact of incarceration. So much for joining us. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Apologies, I actually got an urgent collect call from the women inside that are incarcerated, and I just could not, you know, Zoom meeting or not, I could not let that bypass, and so I had to accept it, as they're really being mentally tortured right now with the treatment that they're enduring in quarantine because of COVID. And so, yeah, so I just, you know, I also come from direct impact experience. I have spent over 23 years of my life in jail and prison. I am from Orange County, so I'm very familiar with Orange County Jail. My son is right now being held in Theo Lacey. And I have numerous friends that I still have stayed in touch with since the day of my last parole date, which was February 7th, 2009. I had to turn myself in with only 18 months sobriety at the time because the cause of my arrest was a heroin addiction. So when you stop and think that over 20 years of my life, I kept getting sentenced to prison when, you know, what I needed was treatment, what I needed was care. And that's why I've been such a huge part of the Alternatives to Incarceration work group in the city of Los Angeles. We have 3 core values in which we base our foundation, which is racial equity and justice, inclusion of many voices, and human-centered language, which Daisy did touch on in the beginning. And so just a brief overview of the Alternatives to Incarceration work group. It's in Los Angeles. It's meeting with the Board of Supervisors. It's been an ongoing process for this past year, but really when you look at it, it's been like a decade of organizing. And I'm talking about like putting jail beds in front of the Board of Supervisors meetings, you know, just so many different things that were organized, bringing the youth in and bringing those that, you know, with direct experience. And so what we were able to do through this, though, I was elected as a voting member and a co-chair by Supervisor Janice Hahn. And I was a co-chair to the ad hoc committee, community engagement. We have 5 different ad hocs to get the voices of all the groups and all the people. So we went into 7 different communities in the city of Los Angeles. And then we synthesized this information from community-driven feedback and we developed recommendations, and also from the other ad hoc committees too. And then we had several other focus groups to include gender and sexual orientation, trans voices, and LGBTQ. And we ended up coming up with over 100 recommendations, in which we submitted to the Board of Supervisors on March 10th. And now we are in the phase of the implementation process, and that's taking more advocacy. Right now, you know, we've been advocating. I am from Orange County. I was born and raised in Orange County all my life. While doing this work, I was a resident of Los Angeles, but I just recently moved back to Orange County so that I could be a voting member in Orange County and hopefully see some of the same accountability that we see in Los Angeles right now. In Los Angeles, the sheriffs were recently charged for forging names in the gang database. Those sheriffs are being held accountable with criminal charges, but yet we see in Orange County where they continue over and over again to break the law, and they end up getting promotions. You know, the Orange County Jail has never had to be accountable to anyone, and Orange County sheriffs have never had to be accountable to anyone. So this is definitely something that's going to be a challenge ahead of us, but I do believe that that I know it's possible because we're seeing it happen in Los Angeles right now. We're seeing where Board of Supervisors are voting to take a percentage of the sheriff's budget and invest that into the communities. We're seeing that people want care, not cages, and that people need treatment. As Patty was discussing the mental health in the Orange County Jail, she had a totally different experience because the mental health never wanted to give me anything, not one pill, and said I wasn't crazy. You know, even when I just tried to see them to get something because of my heroin withdrawals. So I could get absolutely nothing. So while on one hand, you know, somebody might have gotten too many pills or any pill, then there's the other hand where someone can get absolutely no treatment at all. And that's the one thing when I talk to media, I think it's very, very important to stress. As massive as our jail and prison system is, as massive as the incarceration system is, not to take one experience and then accept that as truth. Because you can literally be in one housing unit and then the very next housing unit can be experiencing something totally different. Just my son was just on the most recent hunger strike because for the last like 4 months, they had only been getting cold sack lunches because of COVID. And so they did get, now they're getting dinner hot, but they're still getting the sack lunch for breakfast. In the women's prison, they were put on cold sack lunches, a hard-boiled egg and a bologna sandwich. So we see this happening throughout the state, in the jails, in the prisons, and we see the treatment of people. But it's time for Orange County to start being held accountable. It's time that, that these officers do start getting charges pressed on them. Another huge thing is pretrial incarceration. Many people with racial disparities cannot afford bail. But right now, Proposition 25 to the referendum to allow SB 10, that is a very, very dangerous bill. I myself, just speaking as an individual human being, Dolores Canales, I am voting no on 25 because it is very dangerous. And Hertzberg knows that the people don't like it. Hertzberg knows that judicial counsel and probation have all the power. A lot of people don't want to be vocal because they don't want to make it sound like they're siding with the bail bond industry. But if you're not siding with the bail bond industry, if you research this bill, Prop 25, you will see that it is highly accepted by probation, because what is going to end up happening is that probation is going to get millions of dollars of increased funding, therefore empowering their lobbying status. And from my personal experience, I had a nephew on probation that committed suicide because all we've ever seen is probation cannot be new and improved, and all of a sudden they care about the people. What we have seen is that they go to houses in Orange County. I've had them show up in ninja suits with dogs. You know, just the experience overall could be so dangerous and so mentally traumatizing. So we really have to pay close attention to what is going on right now, and how they can end up being worse for the people while it might sound like a good thing. But I'm just going to definitely keep this very short. And you know, because I know we have a long list of amazing, incredible speakers. And so I'll go ahead and wrap this up. I had to turn myself in February 7th, 2009 for my last prison sentence. I was out on bail facing a life sentence. If SB 10 would have been implemented, I would not have been allowed to bail out, because SB 10 will 100% use risk assessments. And I was very high risk. So I just want to say that I did turn myself in with 18 months sobriety, and I continued on in my sobriety, and I became an advocate inside. And since the day I paroled, February 7, 2009, I have not turned my back on those that remain inside, because I am not free until they are all free. I always say my heart is sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Because believe me, there's not a day that goes by that I don't see their faces in my mind, that I don't hear their voices in my head, that I don't think it's 4:30 yard recall, that I don't think of, you know, every little thing. And right now, as I'm continuing to hear from them, that they're being tortured, that they're suffering, that they're literally writing me in all capital letters saying, please help us, I will continue to be an advocate. I will continue to use my voice and my experience. And thank you so much for having me on. Go ahead, Daisy.
Thank you so, so much, Dolores, for sharing your experiences, sharing your amazing advocacy, and really uplifting the voices of not only your experiences, but the voices of people that still remain behind bars. If there are any questions for Dolores, please drop them in the chat box. I see lots of comments coming in, so powerful. Thank you, Dolores. Amazing words, thank you. Just reading some of the comments coming in. And as questions come in, we can circle back or email them to you, Dolores. I know that you have a lot going on right now, so we really appreciate you having taken the time. Next, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rose, who is going to introduce our next guest speaker. So Rose, take it away.
It is my honor to introduce Jose Armendariz. Jose is an incarcerated student, writer, and organizer. Jose plans to pursue a degree in journalism or creative writing upon his release. He is committed to supporting and uplifting the experiences of incarcerated people. His writing about COVID-19 in the county jail system and the planned expansion of an OC jail were published in The Voice of OC. His advocacy has been written about in LA Opinion and Cal Matters. After earning a paralegal certificate, Jose helped an undocumented incarcerated person who was facing deportation apply for asylum. Jose has demonstrated great leadership and has supported incarcerated people in resolving conflict and raising grievances. This has been possible because of the trusting relationship that Jose has developed with others. He approaches all people with respect and dignity and a willingness to help. The latter stems from his view that the humanity and well-being of other people in custody is inextricably tied to his own. So, very happy to share, and we will be playing a recording of Jose.
My name is Jose Armendariz. I am a Mexican and Salvadoran American man. I am 30 years old and I have been incarcerated since the age of 16. First, I want to say that I'm extremely grateful to have the opportunity to share a little bit about my life with you all, and I hope that what I share will help you all understand the struggles and challenges that those of us behind bars face every day. I believe in treating others with love and respect, and I believe in what Congressman John Lewis, rest in peace, called good trouble. Whether it costs me my liberty or my life, I will always stand up against any injustice that I witness. Of course, this has not always been my attitude, but as I've grown older, I have come to realize that simply expressing my beliefs in equality and social justice does not create change. So even when what I'm standing for can sometimes create trouble for me here in custody, for standing up for others and for speaking out against things that I see are wrong, you know, these things can come with every type of retaliation you can possibly imagine, but I feel that it is my duty to stand up against these injustices and speak out so that real change can actually occur. I see this revolving door where guys come in, get out, come in, get out, and not being one of them myself, at first I kind of resented that. I said, you know what, like, how can you not appreciate the one thing that I dream of and hope for every day, which is freedom? But as I've learned their stories, as I've learned their journeys, as they've opened up and shared with me all the struggles and challenges that they face upon release, I've been able to see that these people do want something different. These people do want opportunities. They do want change. They do want help. They do want to better their future. But unfortunately, we have a system that does not offer those opportunities to them. And nobody likes jail. It's a horrible place to be. And so jail is not the answer. Jail is not the place where people get help. Jail is not the place where people get rehabilitated. This place has absolutely no rehabilitation. It's designed and built specifically to punish.
And then we can go to the next slide, which will have his response to a second
Well, I have
question.
been in custody. Well, I have been in custody at the Orange County Jail under 3 different administrations: the Mike Corona administration, Sandra Hutchins, and now Don Barnes. And quite frankly, I have not seen any significant change from the time that I first came in when I was 16 years old to now that I'm 30. The attitude by deputies is still very much the same. They're very violent. They don't do anything to try to solve things by any way other than confrontation. So I've experienced in 3 different locations some brutal beatings at the hands of deputies, some for just walking on the wrong side of the wall and not hearing them tell me to move to the other side. I've been beat because as a diabetic, I try to take food into the bus on my way to court, and I try to explain that I carry this food because I'm diabetic and sometimes my blood sugar drops and I need to have something at hand. The deputy became very aggressive, yelling at me, telling me he didn't care, that I was not going to bring food in his bus. At the end of the ride, we came out of the bus. He took off my waist chains and shackles and just kept trying to pick a fight with me, telling me to swing, take a swing, tough guy, come on, tough guy, take a swing. I didn't respond, so I refused to engage, and I just try to walk away. I try not to react, even though he kept trying to instigate a fight with me. When he saw that that I wasn't gonna do anything, he went to grab my hand. He said that he saw me make it into a fist, even though this was not true. And he went to grab my hand and he tried to twist it, took me down to the ground, and immediately all the deputies, about 20 deputies, jumped in, started beating me, left me. I was in a pool of my own blood. I have scars on my forehead from that incident. So violence on behalf of deputies is something that is very common here, that I see all the time. Another thing that I have experienced here in the last 14 years that I've been incarcerated has been the waist chains and the shackles. Since I was 16 years old, I've been getting shackled and waist chained to go anywhere outside of the module where I'm housed, to court, medical, anywhere where I have to step out of the module, I get chained and shackled. This to me is something that I personally find disturbing, as I have scars all over my wrists from the from the chains. I have scars all over my ankles. When I'm on chains and shackles, I can't eat. I can't use the restroom. It's impossible to use the restroom. So I look at my scars, and I know what year and when I got every scar from every time that I've been chained and shackled. There's been times where, I just can't handle it, take it no more, and I've asked deputies if they could please loosen them up. And in a very sadistic way, what they've done is pull me to the side, and I'm thinking, great, I'm gonna get my chains loosened up, and instead, for complaining, they tighten them up even more and tell me to stop complaining. So it's an attitude and behavior that I've seen while in here. We have a failed grievance system that pretty much consists of your word against ours, and because we're deputies, our word is always going to be valued more than yours. So we file grievances. The grievance system doesn't work because if it's something that they don't like or something that might affect one of their partners, they have a way of covering up for each other. So a lot of these grievances just go in the trash can. And how can we prove that we ever filed a grievance when there's no evidence of it? So we file grievances, they don't get heard, we never hear back from them, and when the issue is brought up, they just claim that we never filed anything, even though we've been filing grievances all over and over again. With medical care especially, I've had two incidents where, I'm a diabetic, so one incident, my blood sugar was low. I pushed the emergency button. I asked for help, medical assistance. The CSA, which works with the deputies inside the guard station, did not respond. I told him, he told me just hold on, that they were busy, they were doing something. And I eventually passed out. When I woke up, I was still shaking very much from the low blood sugar. I had to treat my own sugar. I had started looking for food. People started sending me food under the door, trying so I can get my blood sugar back up. But medical staff was never alerted. A second incident was one where there was a guy in here who was pepper sprayed while inside his cell. He just simply didn't want to move. Instead of trying to de-escalate the situation, they escalated it. They started trying to instigate a fight with him. Eventually, they fumigated the cell. Even though he was alone in the cell by himself, he was no harm to anybody. He was not putting nobody's life in danger. His life wasn't in danger. Staff's life wasn't in danger. And all of us were saved. They still decided to pepper spray the whole cell. We all share the same ventilation system. So if something goes into one cell, the air circulates through the ventilation system, so we're all breathing in the same air. Eventually, this pepper spray aerosol made it into our cells through the ventilation system. I began to choke. I suffer from asthma. I began to choke. I was vomiting. I couldn't breathe. I pressed the emergency button. They told me what was my emergency. They asked me what my emergency was. I was coughing. I could barely utter words. I was telling them that I couldn't breathe, that I needed help. They didn't respond. Eventually, I ran out. They popped my door, and I ran outside of the sector into a recreation area. There was medical staff standing downstairs, multiple deputies. I'm throwing up as I'm running. They're saying that I'm being dramatic, that if I'm still moving, if I'm still up, then I'm good. As long as I'm not down, they don't have to respond. And so this is basically the kind of stuff that we see. If it's not happening to me, I know it's happening to someone else because I'm witnessing it.
The last question that we asked Jose was, what can we do as a community to demand change? How can people on the outside best support people on the inside?
I believe the best way that people in the community can show support to us is by becoming involved with what's going on in Sacramento. There's a lot of organizations that are currently in existence, such as Initiate Justice, the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, that work with other organizations and that work with state senators and people from Sacramento to change laws that by pushing for justice reform and just demanding accountability from the Orange County Sheriff's Department is something that will greatly help us in here, demanding that to try to reintegrate back into society who we know we owe so much to, and we want to become a part of our community again, but without the help and assistance that we need, unfortunately, that's not happening. You know, more than half of the guys that come through here either suffer from substance abuse issues or some form of mental illness. This place is not the answer to mental illness. It exacerbates their condition and makes it worse. I've seen a lot of people in here who have complete mental breakdowns because the conditions are so severe and so horrible. Jail is definitely not the answer to treat mental illness or to treat substance abuse issues. Like I said, this place right now is a place of punishment and not rehabilitation. It's a waste of taxpayer money, $280-something million to build more beds when that money can be used in programs that can help people once they're released, or things that are actually gonna change and make a change and make a difference in the lives of the incarcerated people and the lives that are eventually going to be affected by our release, which is the community. So if we can work together with the community and the community can help us in our reintegration back into society, that's what really matters. That's what's really going to make a change. And that's what's really going to stop this revolving door.
So that's the end of Jose's testimony, what he agreed to share with us. And I have been seeing some folks chime in the group chat, and I know that listening to his story and listening to the stories of Patty and Dolores can bring up a lot of emotions. So we do want to make space for people to share in the chat box. How are you feeling? What comes to mind? And then I also know that Jose's sister was able to join us. So I want to say a huge thank you to Joanna and a huge thank you to Jose. So any messages that you all would like for us to relay to him, right? Like, that's important for him to know. As difficult as it is to hear about such traumatic experiences, so much misconduct, I mean, just like so much pain, right? Like, we also need to remember that Jose has lived this, Patty has lived this, Dolores has lived this. And while it's difficult for us to hear, it's necessary for us to know what's happening behind bars. And that hopefully, in whatever way we're feeling, whether it's anger, frustration, sadness, that drives us to action. But we do want to make space. So please feel free to chime in the chat box. And I believe that we're gonna put up a slide that can help name our emotions. Anyone feel comfortable chiming in either in the chat box or by unmuting yourself and letting us know how you feel after hearing directly from 3 individuals that have been impacted by the carceral system? Thank you, MM. I hear that. They shared that they feel frustrated, paralyzed, and dismayed. Cheryl saying thank you for sharing your story. So we'll be sure to relay that to Jose, and hopefully Patty and Dolores can still read that as well. I see Sonali shared, I applaud Jose's strength and courage. His voice will be my inspiration. We'll be happy to hear that. Maybe what we can do, given like the heaviness of what we just went through, is maybe take a 2 to 3 minute bio break because when we come back, we will be segueing to talking about something that Jose alluded to, the jail expansion in Orange County, and why, you know, jails aren't the places where people go and get better. So we do want to encourage you all, you know, to take a little bit of a break. And then if anyone wants to process or unpack, please feel free. I'm happy to add my email address and cell phone number. I know sometimes we need time, right? We need time to process. So I'm happy to share my contact info in case anyone wants to reach out separately to talk. And I'm sure some of my other colleagues might also be willing and available to maybe schedule a separate call to talk about that. But we'll go ahead and take a 3-minute break. So if folks can come back by 7:20, that would be great. Thank you all. Next, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Rose Ochoa. Rose left a 12-year career as a business management consultant to pursue racial, gender, sexual, and environmental justice and explore their expression through aerial and circus performance art. They are a queer, non-binary, non-monogamous advocating for equality and abolition. They are also a founding and steering committee member of Transforming Justice Orange County. I'll turn it over to you, Rose.
Thank you for that, Daisy, greatly appreciated. And thank you all for being here and listening to the stories of Dolores and Patty and Jose. So as some of you have heard, and what we're going to talk about right now is the James A. Musick expansion. So the James A. Musick facility was built in the 1960s during Jim Musick's time as sheriff. It was originally named the Orange County Industrial Farm. The Musick facility is actually still called to this day the farm. It was until the state of California outlawed cooperation with ICE in 2017, the Musick facility was contracted as a for-profit immigrant concentration camp. It has been empty and closed for about a year now. Next slide. So the Musick expansion project, it was approved by the Board of Supervisors on May 5th. Orange County plans to add 2 additional housing units to this empty jail facility. This would add a total of 896 beds, so close to 900 additional beds to the Musick facility, and this facility is located in Irvine. This would then increase the capacity to roughly 1,300 to 2,200 by 2022. So the project is planned to be, construction project planned to be completed by 10/22. Majority of the beds are slated to be mental health beds. Next slide. So to note of what kind of beds are currently available. So currently in the facility, there's 140 beds that are allocated to mental health. This would then increase that bed count to 600. The LPS, or Latterman-Petrus short bed count. For anybody who's not familiar with that, the LPS Act sought to end the inappropriate, indefinite, and involuntary commitment of persons with mental health disorders. It also established a right to prompt psychiatric evaluation and treatment in some situations, and set out strict due process protections for mental health clients. So it's another form of mental health beds that are allocated. So currently there are 5 beds allocated for LPS, and that would get increased to 45. And then for substance use disorder, which currently there are none, it would be set to 200. So relying on incarceration is both costly and ineffective. One of the things that you have been hearing from Dolores and the stories shared is the extreme cost that is included. So with regards to the Musick expansion, the construction, insurance, construction management, and utilities associated with it would come out to a total of $288 million. Operating costs for that facility are between $61.5 and $62.5 million. So rounding for the first year of Musick, this would be about $350 million that would be spent on this empty facility. Incarceration is socially concentrated, that we are no longer incarcerating the individual, we are incarcerating whole social groups. This impacts people's families and communities. A little bit of a deeper dive into the funding for construction, because one of the things that we have been told, and one of the ways that the Orange County Sheriff's Department has been pitching this project, is that it is funded by the state, but it is only partially funded by the state. So for phase 1 of the project, it's going to create 512 general population beds at the Musick facility, and they will be leveraging the Assembly Bill 900, which these are funds that allocated $1.2 billion to 21 counties to build new beds. The phase 2 of AB 900, Assembly Bill 900, allotted Orange County with an award allocation of $100 million for a project costing a total of $114 million to build the 512 new beds in the county. For phase 2, this is where they're dedicating to mental health. So this is where they would be creating the 384 mental health beds. And they plan to have that supported by Senate Bill 1022. Primarily, it is meant to be used for the treatment, rehabilitation, and mental health services. This money from SB 1022 was approved in 2011, which allocated an additional $500 million for new jail construction to provide over 2,000 new beds in 15 counties. Orange County specifically was once again provided funds under Senate Bill 1022, and their award was $80 million. So if we're looking at that, this project of $288 million in construction and management and utilities cost, plus adding in the operational costs, so $350 million, but only $180 million are coming from the state. They are planning, Orange County Board of Supervisors has approved a loan to help facilitate the cost, that they are taking out a loan with the Orange County Waste and Recycling Department, in which they are taking out $14.5 million to fund this expansion. So some may be asking, well, how are these funds coming from? They are coming from you. Although some of them are coming from Senate bills and Assembly bills that are from the state, that money eventually gets funded from taxpayers. So if we were to look at the public safety sales tax, this authorizes the expenditure of these funds for public safety, in which public safety is what Orange County Sheriff's Department and jails are under in the budget allocation. AB 109, those funds were provided from the dedicated revenue stream through vehicle license fees that we pay and a portion of the state sales tax. So these are coming from these different avenues. So although the $180 million is coming from those two state bills, it does eventually still come from us, from taxpayers and people who own vehicles. And the other area that it's going to be coming from is the discretionary fund for the Orange County Board of Supervisors for their budget. This is always a great graph that the Voice of OC has shared. We shared it last week in Workshop 1. Just goes to show the fact that the board allocates most of the county's discretionary funding to public protection, in which public protection is where Orange County Sheriff's Department and the Orange County DA fall under. That has increased by over $100 million over this course from 2009 to 2020. And as you can see here, the healthcare agency and the social services agency has decreased. So both by 18%, especially in this time of the pandemic, We are in a recession. A lot of cities, as well as the county, is looking at the budget to see how it'll be impacted with businesses closing, with a temporary shutdown, with full shutdowns, as some businesses have incurred. And so we are definitely, this is something that we'll be looking into, and we'll be talking further into in workshop 4 of this series of Follow Your Money in the Budget Advocacy. So if substance use and mental health disorders were addressed as public health issues, they would not become criminal justice issues. This is one of the big parts of Care Not Cages, Cannot Get Well in a Cell, is that for these areas, we want them to be treated in the community, in other services, and not under the criminal justice system. Next up, we have a poll question. That'll pop up here shortly. It has not already. Perfect. Okay. And so, which of the following statements is or are false? So you can check all that applies. Options that you have: OC plans to add roughly 900 new jail beds to the vacant Musick facility. Construction management, insurance, and utilities costs estimated at about $288 million will be completely covered by the state. Roughly 700 of the new jail beds are slated to be for mental health and substance use disorder care. Operating costs for the expanded Musick facility are estimated between $61.5 and $62.5 million a year. And last option is OC Board of Supervisors more than doubled the amount of taxpayer money they directly control to the OC Sheriff's Department over the last decade. Give you all a moment to think that. So as some of you may have seen, the false that the Musick construction is not being fully covered by the state. Only a portion of it will be. So OC secured the $180 million from the state between Assembly Bill 900 and Senate Bill 1022. OC Board of Supervisors will likely cover the overrun and the difference with public safety sales tax dollars, as well as coming from Assembly Bill 109 funds and general fund dollars. So tax dollars, taxpayer dollars going back to the system. So we can't get well in a cell. As some of you have seen this or Care Not Cages, there have been multiple groups who've done research projects, such as the National Alliance of Mental Illness, have long supported diversion as a primary policy response to overcriminalization and incarceration of people with serious mental health diagnoses. We would not incarcerate someone who has asthma or someone who has diabetes because of behavior associated with their condition. Yet, time and time again, we have criminalized people who battle mental health issues and substance use disorder. So it's one of those things where we haven't, as a society, have like to redefine how we see people and how we prioritize where we want to spend our money. Cuffs don't cure. So just a couple numbers with regards to out in the community versus how many people in state prisons and jails. So for serious mental health diagnoses, people were looking at numbers for people who are age 18 or older, who have substance use disorder, co-occurring disorder, both serious mental health diagnosis as well as substance use disorder. So as we can see here, the percentages that are in the community are much smaller than those that are in state prisons or jails. The Mental Health Services Act states that the high prevalence of mental disorders and substance use disorders in correctional settings procedures, poor outcomes for both affected individuals and correctional agencies. According to the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration in 2017, they put out a guidelines for successful transition of people with mental or substance use disorders from jails and prisons. This report showed that jails and prisons house significantly greater proportions of individuals with mental, substance use, and co-occurring disorders than the general public. So what are our demands? As Transforming Justice Orange County and multiple other organizations, we're calling for the expansion of the Musick facility to stop. That we demand the Board of Supervisors to stop the contract, to stop the project, to expand the facility. It is not needed. It is not going to provide additional care to the community, to the people that are in custody. And it is money that doesn't need to be spent on the Sheriff's Department, on the jails. It is money that can be allocated back to our community, back to providing more community-based care. Increased funding for affordable housing. We call for increasing community-based mental health and substance use disorder care, including prevention and diversion programs. We also ask that the Board of Supervisors invest in and implement policies and practices that reduce the county's jail population, stop the revolving door of incarceration, and support community well-being. There are multiple instances of this that we've seen, especially with the COVID pandemic, in which there can be policies. You know, there was the emergency zero bail schedule that was put out, and it helped to keep the population lower at a minimum. These are things that can continue. They don't need to just be for this one situation. These are the things that we are calling for in the community, and from the Board of Supervisors, from the courts, and from the Sheriff's Department. So we must invest in people and community well-being. So if you are interested in how to get involved, we have created this hashtag of Stop the Musick. We have been doing a couple different actions, petitions out there. Main thing is you can visit the stopthemusic.com. So on that website, give some additional facts that I just went over, as well as a way that you can subscribe to our Stop the Musick newsletter, which we will get, if you do subscribe, you will receive information about music, as well as ways to help us to stop this project. We do different flyering and canvassing, helping to bring the information out, because as on May 5th, when the Board of Supervisors approved this, this was during a time in the pandemic when most people who were attending the Board of Supervisors meetings were asked to not, to only to view it online. And as of now, the Board of Supervisors, if you email your public comments, they are added to the notes and are not spoken out loud. It's one of these ways in which the Board of Supervisors has silenced the community, has kept this project quiet for the most part. And we want to make sure that more people know about it, know that this is happening in Irvine / Lake Forest area. This is happening in those neighborhoods, and you can contact your elected representatives, especially emailing the Board of Supervisors to let them know your opinion, as well as we'll be hosting different protests and rallies for this. So you can always join us to bring more awareness to the public. So we have another poll question coming up. I believe there it goes. Okay. So, which of the following two statements is true? Jails and prisons house significantly greater proportions of individuals with mental substance use and co-occurring disorders than are found in the general public. Or individuals with serious mental health diagnoses and substance use disorders are more likely to make bail and experience shorter jail stays. And as you all may have guessed, we have a couple more seconds on this. Yes, so the first one is true that while it is estimated that approximately 5% of people living in the community have a serious mental illness, comparable figures in state prisons and jails are 16% to 17%, respectively. The prevalence of substance use disorders is notably more disparate, with estimates of 8.5% in the general public for ages 18 and older, but it's 53% in state prisons and 68% in jails. The co-occurrence of mental disorders and substance use disorders has been higher among people who are incarcerated in prisons or jails compared with people who are not incarcerated. Okay, so how can you take action today? So one, we have this wonderful QR code that will come up in just a moment. There you go. In which this QR code takes you to this link to an action that ACLU is hosting on their website. It makes it a nice, easy format to send a message directly to the Board of Supervisors. It lays out the multitude of points that I've included here, as well as are on the Stop the Music website, that you can send to the Board of Supervisors to demand them to cancel the jail expansion project. As mentioned, $288 million in construction costs. And on top of that, the $61 to $62 million in operating costs, being $350 million to a jail that is empty. And as Daisy had mentioned earlier, the current jails that are operating, between Theo Lacey and the Central Jail Complex, we are under capacity. So we are not overflowing. There is no need to reopen this empty jail, nor to add these additional beds and spend this additional money during this pandemic time. So this is one way that you can take action. As we mentioned, subscribing to the newsletter. And then if you'd like to get involved more, please send us an email and we can get you in touch with our Stop the Music work group. I'll pause there to see if there are, I think we do have one other slide before questions. Just to note, there are multiple meetings out there in which, from all the different things that we've been talking over the course of this workshop, these are ways that you can get involved. And if you have the time and you have the capacity, we recommend going. You'll most likely see some of us there. We can stay in touch. These are public meetings that everyone is welcome to attend. You can ask questions, put public comments out, as well as to gather information to share. It's one of those things that a lot of these decisions that impact so many people in the OC jails comes from these meetings. And most of the time they don't hear from the public. So if you're able to attend any of these meetings, I know there are a lot, but it is really helpful, or at least to keep tabs on how things are progressing with regards to our government and to the people that we've now voted into place to make these decisions for the people that are in their care and in their custody.
And there were two questions that I saw in the chat box that I can raise, but I've also shared that we will be covering some of that during workshop number 3. The first question is from Mary. Basically, what is our view on conservatorship and or more LPS beds on the medical side of the fence? Let me go back to the full question. Rose, what is your answer for those with serious mental illness, for example, schizophrenia, schizoaffective, bipolar, that don't get the neuropsychiatric care they need and fall into the criminal justice system because they are too symptomatic, lack decision-making capacity surrounding an informed consent, and are unable to self-direct their care? And then, do you support conservatorship and or more LPS beds on the medical side of the fence? This unfortunate population of people are the most left behind. Our behavioral health care agency has not been held responsible for the severely ill either. And then Ruth also chimed in and asked, are there services that TJOC advocates, sorry, I think I copied it wrong. Are the services that TJOC advocates funding for all voluntary? So I did share that we will be covering some of that during workshop number 3, which focuses on community-based care. And just to make a quick plug, we will be having 4 guest speakers next week. We will be having 2 folks from Project Kinship. We will be having the co-executive director from Underground Grit, and we will also be joined by Dr. Alexis Segan, who is a clinical professor of psychiatry and human behavior at UCI. So please join us again so we can dive deeper into some of those questions. But Rosa, I'll turn it over to you in case there's anything else that you'd like to add. And for everyone else, if there's any additional questions that you all have on the Musick expansion, please feel free to drop them in the chat box.
Thank you for those questions. And yes, definitely the next workshop with the expertise from Dr. Alexis Segan is gonna answer this question more fully than what I can offer. From our standpoint, that no, that the mental health beds, the designation for mental health and LPS beds does not do service to the people who are having the mental health issues, especially severe mental health issues. Whether with regards to it being in the medical field, I know that has its own debate, and there are multiple organizations who have been looking to make sure, as we know of how these systems have been built, they do come from the baseline of white supremacy and patriarchy. And so all of us working together to dismantle, to take this deeper look into all of these systems that have been designed and reconstruct them, to redevelop the programs and the policies that are in place, to make sure that everybody is getting care and that no one is getting turned away due to some issue of money, whether it's their poverty, their state, their race, their class, any of these things. So I definitely think we can take a deeper look into the programs that are in the medical industry to make sure, and I know there are different organizations such as like the California Pan-Ethnic Health Network, and there are a couple others that have been making sure to look into the medical industry, especially the mental health industry, to check how is it doing with regards to diversity and racism, and how is it satisfying the community? You know, what areas is it potentially missing? So definitely one of those things where we don't think that the mental health beds and LPS beds in the jails is necessary, and reassessing that in the medical industry is something that we do want to take a deeper dive into. With regards to, so the next workshop is definitely going to be a wonderful one. We'll take a lot more information. I was trying to now remember the other question that you shared. With regards to so Transforming Justice Orange County, we are currently all volunteer based. That's why we're asking for donations for the speakers for these workshops. If anybody does want to get more involved with Transforming Justice, our work spans from things like this, public education, workshops, webinars, as well as legislative advocacy. So making public comments, giving testimony for different bills that we, work with the community that support the community. And so if anybody wants to get more involved with Transforming Justice, welcome to send us an email. Same thing, if you need our help, we are always, happy to extend our hand to as much as what we have capacity for. But for anybody who is having, has questions, would like some more advocacy on their behalf, for a hearing that they're having, somebody that they know is incarcerated, reach out to us. We can plug you in. We're connected with multiple different organizations in Orange County, and we'll help get you to the place, get you the information that you need. So happy for you to send us that information, ask us the questions, and let's just start having that conversation. Okay.
And Rose, I don't know if you want to uplift, the question has already been answered, but I think it's a very important question that Isabella raised. And I can read it. Is it possible the Musick expansion can be stopped? And then two TJOC members responded. The first, yes, the LA mental health jail was stopped at the same stage. The second response, yes, it is possible. Other counties have fought similar fights and have been successful, but it takes a groundswell of community support. The more people we can gather to help stop this, the better.
Yes, definitely. I know it is one of those hard questions where the Board of Supervisors has already approved the project. It seems like it's on its way, but no, we've been consulting with organizations in LA who have stopped a mental health jail expansion. We have spoken with organizations in San Francisco and other areas who have been who are doing the same thing. We are all in the same group nationwide, where there is this collective network of organizations who are working to stop new jail expansion. So we are still able to stop this and then as somebody had mentioned that, yes, the more people who are able to send messages to the Board of Supervisors, who are able to make public comments, submit a letter, join us for the rallies, share your commitment, share your passion. If this is something that you believe should not happen, share it with people that you know, social media, email, in your network, because the more people who are aware of it, the more voices that come out. For the Board of Supervisors who make those decisions, they see it as constituents, they see it as their votes, and these are the people, so we back them. So yes, I think it's still possible. We still have more to do. So we, greatly appreciate you asking that question. And we've been consulting with multiple organizations on the strategy of what we can do. And we appreciate all of your support. So
folks have any upcoming actions or information about events that relate to what we discussed today, please post them in the chat. This is the time to uplift the work that you're doing. We want to make sure as many people as possible can plug in and support as well. And I believe Rose is back.
I am, but can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. So I think, I'm not sure where I cut off. So hopefully most of that came across with the fact the main point is that we still have the ability to stop the jail expansion. And what it will take is all of you to help send a message to the Board of Supervisors. Okay. And I think we're on to, if anybody has any announcements, might have already been said. I'll pass it back to you, Daisy.
Thanks, Rose. Yeah, so we share, if folks have any announcements, drop them in the group chat. Workshop number 3 is next Thursday, 8:20, same time, 6 to 8 p.m. Like we mentioned earlier, the focus is going to be community-based systems of care and alternatives to incarceration. We have some great speakers lined up, so we look forward to you all joining us again. And then workshop number 8 is scheduled for Thursday, August 27th. And that is going to be Follow the Money. So we're going to do a deep dive into budget advocacy. And if folks want to stay connected, our email address is info@transformingjusticeoc.org. You can also visit our website. Link is on the slide. And again, as we mentioned earlier, so TJOC, we are all volunteer based. We are offering this series for free, but we would like to compensate our amazing guest speakers whenever possible, and also, you know, translation support that's being provided by Adriana. Thank you so much, Adriana, for all your help today. So if folks would like to donate, you can do so through PayPal at JusticeOC, and you can add a note for Reimagine Justice. And I believe that that is the last slide. Unless folks have any other questions, we just want to say a huge thank you. Hopefully